With every day that passes, we get closer and closer to the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit coming to an end, which will be some absolutely insanely massive, fantastic news for XRP holders. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about what I think will happen once that case does come to an end. Once we get closure and once we get clarity over XRP, I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts and opinions on what I think is going to happen with the price action of XRP, where I think it's going to go, and all that kind of good stuff. So as I get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, smash that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. And if you haven't yet joined us in Discord, then guys, check it out, linked in the description down below. It's a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free, and I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. It's the first place we go to notify you of everything that's going on in crypto, so why not keep a finger on the pulse of crypto by joining us in Discord? Let's make a start with this one. We've actually got three different charts to take a look at. We have this one here, which is going to be actually taking a look at a few different things from a smart money concepts point of view. We have our Elliott wave theory chart, and then we have our bigger macro piece, okay? So I think we're going to start here, and we'll take a look at the Elliott wave theory side of things. Then we'll jump on over into the smart money concepts, and then we'll kind of wrap up with the bigger macro weekly time frame stuff. Okay, so I still see everything here being quite corrective, but we did see that we tested this downward trend line 4 times, as highlighted here, and we have broken above. Now, we were riding this quite a bit, and we did get that break outwards here, and there are a couple of bullish tails inside these structures as well. So up here, you can see they had higher highs, higher lows. These obviously have a tendency to break down. We see that time and time again. But down here on this low side, we saw that we had basically lower lows and lower highs. So we were talking about a break upwards from here. We can see these things. Now, initially, we were thinking about trying to test and get rejected on the 200 EMA, which we did for a little while, but then we had this break up here as well. So what's actually happened over the last few days is price actions come back down, hit this previous high at 43.3 cent, which if I hover on here and we take a look at the low, it was actually 43.29, and rested on the 200 EMA, which is 43.17, and you can see that right in there. So we can see that when we actually had a resistance on our 200 EMA, we broke past it, we've come back down, we back test it, it is now acting as our support line. But we have, of course, broken below, and we are holding below the 50 EMA. So we're going to find ourselves getting a bit of a squeeze here. But just like we had previously, we are finding ourselves in an interesting position. That is that we have lower highs and lower lows here for XRP. This basically is going to give us our bullish tell again, where we are seeking for a break to the upside. Okay, so from our structure, it's not overly bullish because to me it looks like a WXY/XZ structure, and we are looking for one more push to the upside here. Now, with all that being said, we want to be a little bit cautious on that because it does look like it's going to be a reasonably small move. Now, the unknown variable when it comes to the technical analysis side of XRP is the SEC versus Ripple. Essentially, the chart data doesn't really know anything about that. You know, you got kind of people buying and selling and people speculating and all the kind of usual stuff, but no one really truly knows what's going to happen or when that lawsuit is actually going to come to an end. And if they do know, they are definitely not going to be kind of leaking that information because I think there will be serious consequences to those individuals, right, if they were to be found out it's leaking that kind of data. So I don't think anyone really knows. There's no insider that's going to kind of know when that's going to come to a conclusion, but I do kind of have a feeling, considering how long it's been, that it will be reasonably soon, I would have thought. Everything that's going on with the SEC, 𝗕𝗓𝗪 𝗫𝗠𝗀, I think will potentially speed things along a little bit. So in terms of price action, what do we think is going to happen once we get closure? Now, ultimately, what we've been saying since 2020, when this lawsuit by 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗪 was dropped on Ripple, essentially was it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if Ripple win, it doesn't really matter if Ripple lose, and if there's a settlement, it doesn't really matter. And what I mean by this is that obviously we want Ripple to win because Ripple winning would be a fantastic step forward for crypto. If Ripple lose, it's potentially quite damaging to crypto, but the price action of XRP doesn't really care. It's going to kind of rally regardless. Basically, we're in a kind of state of unknown, and it basically makes it very difficult for people to understand what they're they're investing in, right? So people are kind of just waiting for an understanding as to whether XRP is going to be classified as a security or whether XRP will be classified as something else like a utility token or an exchange token or whatever, right? Essentially, what we need to do is just get that clarity. Once you have that clarity, which will come from a win, lose, draw settlement kind of situation, the markets will be able to react and they'll be able to see the US listing, XRP on exchanges correctly, following the law of the US as per the clarity that is provided. Now, obviously, we suspect that clarity is one of the reasons that settlement hasn't been reached. It's one of the reasons that we probably have seen this lawsuit drag out for as long as we have done, right? Ripple would probably have been open to settling if the SEC could provide the clarity over where XRP is, right? But I don't think the SEC are forthcoming in any of those kind of things, and to kind of call a cryptocurrency not a security is a pretty big deal when it comes to the SEC, and of course that can be used against them later, so they're going to be very reluctant to do so, and I think that's one of the main reasons that we haven't seen settlement. That being said, I do suspect that we're going to see a Ripple win, and I think I guess the US government and committees and councils and whatnot, I think, are kind of gearing up Gary Gensler to be the fall guy. And I don't disagree with him. I think he needs to be fired. We've spoken about this quite a number of different times, to kind of, be talking about things in one breath and then another in another breath, and the inability to kind of identify something as a security or a commodity and so forth. And basically, they're just trying to screw the markets. And I don't think it's Jay Clayton himself. It's whoever's pulling Jay Clayton's strings, because he's just like any other politician and anybody else in government. They have a master above them. So, I do think that the judge will actually side with Ripple on this one. And I think that you'll find that Gary Gensler will be the fall guy for it. He'll be out the door on the back of this one, and so that they can kind of say the SEC only lost because of Jay Clayton's poor leadership and so forth. And so that's what I think is going to happen, right? So therefore, I think we'll get clarity over what XRP is in the US, right? And as such, the exchanges will start listing it, and the FOMO will be intense for XRP. So what about price? Where do we think that's going to go? Since technically we can't necessarily see exactly where things are from a FOMO point of view, there are a few things that are kind of allow us to kind of get an idea as to kind of where things can go. So we do have the ability here to think of this as a three-wave corrective structure move to the upside, where we can currently see a structured move towards $5.58 and $11.25. Now, we have to bear in mind there are going to be some key areas of resistance, right? There's definitely going to be resistance at the previous all-time high. There's a lot of people who had been trapped in XRP positions for years, and the second that they kind of see cost neutral or potentially a little bit higher, they might want to cash out. So there's going to be pockets of people who are going to kind of increased selling pressure as price pushes upwards. So we want to be a little bit wary about that. I do think, though, that the demand from the FOMO and the fact that there's going to be clarity on XRP would be what drives the demand past a lot of that resistance from those historical purchasers who are looking to liquidate their assets. With that being said, I do think there's going to be some theoretical numbers that are also going to act as resistance. $5 flat would be another resistance barrier, along with $10 being flat, and of course, 15, 20, 25. Basically, any round number I think is going to be pretty big resistance, as psychologically people like to liquidate on round numbers. So we want to be aware of those things. But there are some interesting kind of breakdowns of this chart that could potentially see us moving up higher. Now, if we were to come up towards the 1.618, we would trigger ourselves into an impulsive position where our three-wave structure morphs into a five-wave structure. Now, if we do that, then we are talking about a minimum of 34.95 for XRP, and I think that's pretty achievable, even though the market cap would be pretty high for those people who love market cap. We do have to bear in mind, though, that market cap is driven from price and not a barrier to price discovery. The only two things that really matter for pricing is, of course, going to have to be the supply and the demand. There's a lot of supply, and it's whether or not that the price pushing up into these higher ranges is going to cause a lot of extra supply seeking into the markets, basically drowning out any demand. So we have to be a little bit cautious at places. But you can see here that there is a theoretical potential for a $35 or just short of $35 XRP. Now, if you were to do that, you would still pull back a little and then have another push up higher, where we might even be able to breach into some of those slightly higher numbers, which would be absolutely insane considering the supply of XRP. Now, we would talk about maybe 50, 80, possibly even $100, but I don't think that's actually it's probably not worth talking about until we actually hit this 34.95 target range first. Okay, now it's possible, of course, that our impulsive trigger point becomes even easier to hit should we actually come down a little bit lower in the price chart before we get any kind of clarity over what XRP is in the US. And if that is the case, then we could start seeing that maybe even $10 is our trigger point for an impulsive structure, which means we could actually hit some of those higher numbers and those higher ranges, all on the back of the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit coming to an end. So there's some pretty fantastic things to be thinking about. And at the moment, we are finding ourselves up in resistance. And we can see here that we have a pretty interesting kind of run here to see that where the resistances currently sit, where we might find that there's interesting levels where we want to kind of be cautious on. But for the most part, it does look like there's a pretty clear path to the upside, with the exception of a couple of areas of concern. So for example, if I were to try and draw this on, we could see that there is this little area here that could be interesting over the next little period. And of course, there is an upper range up here as well. Again, would be a very interesting area to kind of be cautious on, along with the bullish market highs from 2021. Also just being up here. So you can see that there's a few areas of concern on the journey to the upside before we kind of breach up in towards the all-time high. But ultimately right now we are finding resistance, so we could see maybe a good dollar cost averaging opportunity on the horizon. Now on this weekly chart, you can of course see that we are below our 200 EMA, and we are trying to fight our way past or above, if you want to really be bullish on the market, the 50 EMA. So all to play for recently. If price does come down, I think it's a bit risky not to be looking to dollar cost average into XRP personally, but that's just my personal thoughts and opinions. I'm not a financial advisor. I can't give you financial advice, but I do think as price pulls back, personally, I think dollar cost averaging is a pretty good strategy here because I don't know when this case is going to come to an end. No one does. And it can happen, and then instantaneously we see 30-40% pump on the price, and wish we dollar cost averaged in when we had those opportunities. So I do think the opportunity to dollar cost average is just around the corner here over the next few weeks, but it's really hard to say for certain how long it will stay down into these kind of levels. So we want to make sure that we are lucky enough to kind of make sure we dollar cost average where possible. But as I said, I'm not a financial advisor. If you do have access to one, you should probably consult them and see what they have to say. But that's my personal thoughts and opinions on XRP and where I think it can go. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you did find this useful and informative, smash that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe? And guys, I'll catch you all in the next one.
We are not financial advisors. None of what we have communicated verbally or in writing here should be considered as financial advice. It is not. Do your own research before investing in any digital asset or affiliate offers, and understand that investing in any crypto is risky. If you do, you need to be prepared to lose your entire investment. This video is for information and entertainment purposes only. All our videos are strictly personal opinions. Please make sure you do your own research and never take our opinions for financial guidance. There are multiple strategies, and not all strategies fit all people. Our videos are not financial advice.